Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Well, we promised to focus on the renewed call by telecoms operators in Nigeria on the Nigerian Communications Commission to urgently consider an upward review of service charges in the sector. And for that conversation, we are now being joined by Gbenga Adebayo, who is President, Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators of Nigeria. Good morning and a warm welcome to the morning show today, sir.
Morning, and thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So you're calling for Alton is calling for an upward review of tariffs, and it says that tariffs have not been reviewed upwards in 11 years. But I want to ask, especially how the cost of diesel is affecting the telecom sector, and if this is one of the main pressures that is leading for a call to increase tariffs.
Thank you for having me. Once again, and I must say that in the press statement we issued, we raised 4 significant issues leading to the challenges that we face in the industry. One of them is issue of consideration of a price review. And we didn't call it price review. We said we should price right. We should look at our tariff to reflect the current cost of providing services. Really and truly what we charge today does not reflect the cost of providing services. And to bring it back to your point, diesel is one of the major components of service provision. As you are aware, we have set sites across the country. A number of those sites are running on generators. These generators have to be powered 24/7. And naturally, if you have high costs of inputs such as diesel, it will translate to other things. Coupled with that is other challenges that we face by way of security of infrastructure, access to the site and all of that. And we did say to government that government needs to look at 4 major issues for us. One is that investment in the sector is dwindling, and it's very tempting to consider that the services are available today and there is no need to do much, whereas a lot is required in terms of investment to optimize what we have and to continue to enjoy the benefits of telecom services. Second is the issue of vandalization of infrastructure. We have suffered significant vandalization of our infrastructure across the country. Very recently, one of the players experienced major fiber cuts in 2 different sectors of the country at different times, and it threw almost half of the country to total blackout because of willful action of the public players. The third is the issue of the pricing right, to price right the services that we offer. Without that, it will be difficult to sustain the industry. And the fourth point we raised in that release is the independence of our regulator, because we believe that the success we have recorded in part is traceable to the independence of our regulator. Where that is being threatened, it raises significant concern about the sustainability of the industry. And those are the issues. So unfortunately, the issue of tariff rise gained the front line, the headlines, understandably so because of the impact on people's lives. But the reality is that it's just one of the very major many issues that we raised in that release.
Yeah, well, it has to be so, because the right pricing that you mentioned will probably be the biggest one that will affect consumers. All the other ones in terms of vandalization, etc., maybe government, you are basically appealing to government and authorities, to come in. But as it will affect those who are already burdened, by so many policies that seek appropriate pricing, people will naturally complain. So I'm asking you, what do you consider, what does your association consider to be the right price in terms of data and calls? Where are we now in terms of pricing, and where are you taking people so that people can at least be prepared mentally? I know, of course, that the regulators, the authorities will need to agree to what you are proposing, but what are you likely to propose?
We're asking for cost-reflective tariff. And for that to happen, there are 2 elements that needs to be taken into account. Number one is that there is currently what we call a pricing window, a window of pricing that has been approved by the regulator, and that has been so for a few years. The second is that there has to be a cost study. If we come as players and say we want to review tariff, we'll make proposals to the regulator. Regulator will conduct an independent study to see what actually is the true cost of providing services, based on which some form of understanding will be made as, okay, you have asked for this review, cost studies show this percentage of review as considerable, and then that is the way to go. What we are asking in this instance is that we have already a price window that has been approved by the regulator. Allow us to work within that price window. But unfortunately, and that's why what I said earlier, the issue of the independence of our regulator. When we approve regulator to have some form of review of our current pricing, within the current pricing window, it was declined. And that's why this issue gained public discussion. Otherwise, we shouldn't come to the public to say we are going to review prices. Within the element of the price frame that we have, we're just to approach the regulator and say, okay, it was 6.40 kobo, for instance. Can we now move to like a 6.41 kobo or 6.42 kobo or a 7 naira or so, a 6.80 kobo, as the case may be, within the price window that has been approved? But that was declined. And we are saying that it doesn't reflect the cost of providing services. For 11 years, we have remained within the same price band. All elements of cost input have gone up. And the concern is that the industry will become unsustainable if those who are to invest here are not investing. Imagine our transition from 21 years ago and the transition from 2G, 3G, 4G, now 5G. Those are transitions that has attracted significant investment. With the current regime that we have, it's difficult to attract investors. And those who used to invest are no longer investing. So we are raising a red flag to say provisions that are being made to accommodate high costs today, players cannot continue like that. So a time will come when people will just stop investing. And it will outmax the current capacity that we have. Then you start having impact on availability, start having impact on quality of services. And you don't want to come to a point where telecom service become available in the morning, it's not available in the afternoon. It's available in the afternoon, it's not available in the evening, because people may not be able to power those sites again. People will not invest in new technologies to be able to optimize what they have. That's why we're saying that now is the time when we have to look at the state of health of the sector and do something to mitigate against a future problem. And tariff is just one of the many elements that we mentioned.
Definitely, yeah. That's what brings me to my next point. I'm going to play a devil's advocate a bit. I mean, there are certain stakeholders, they are saying, instead of just focusing on raising tariffs, maybe telecom companies should focus on improving the quality and the efficiency of the service that they already provide. And maybe that in itself would be a nice segue to push for these increasing tariffs. How would you respond to these suggestions on even the efforts that are being made to enhance the current service delivery that we have within the telco industry?
I think that's also a fair demand. I think that's a fair demand by the operator, by the consumers. But the reality is that you can't even provide good quality of services if you don't invest. That's the reality. And we also spoke about the issue of vandalization of our infrastructure. You may have read in the news a few days ago that even some sites in some parts of the country have been attacked by vandals. You could say that's act of terrorism or that's act of force majeure beyond control of anyone. But somebody has to pay to rebuild that site. It will be the operators. If you have fiber cut across the country and you are struggling to meet your service level obligations, it will be operators that will invest in doing those things. So yes, I do agree that there is a fair demand, that the demand for quality of service improvement is fair, but also you can't isolate that from the investment required to support the quality of services. And that's why government has a role to play in this. So we can take the operators and say operators are asking to review tariff. They are not mindful, they are not sensitive to the concerns of the public. But also government have a significant role to play in this. Number one is that infrastructure that supports the current services has to be protected. Number two is that access to services has to be unhindered. Number three is that telecom infrastructure should be classified as national security and economy infrastructure and accorded the level of protection that is so required. So that the kind of interferences that we're having today, somebody going to cut the fiber, somebody going to build to demolish site, will not happen. We even have cases in some subnationals that due to collection of internet generated revenue, state government lock up sites. When they so do, it impacts on quality of services. The other day we had one of the state players seizing critical sites in his state and affecting access to 10 different states of the federation. And he says,
what led to that state's intervention? What caused that?
IGR, an attempt to collect revenue from operators.
And why are they not paying?
Why operators are not paying? They are not taxes that are captured within the framework of what operators should pay. Today, the industry pays about 49 different taxes and levies to different arms of government. A number of them have no bearing whatsoever with telecom services. Effluent discharge, environmental discharge, sanitation levy,
But I would say, would you not agree that a sanitation levy or environmental levy is important for someone that's burning diesel 24/7?
We are not. So if it's applicable to telecom operators, it should be applicable to other sectors of the economy. It should be applicable to broadcasters, even to the banks and other sectors. So why will you say telecommunications should pay, for example, effluent discharge for said site, with the same generator that you have in homes and offices running on those sites? Why is that same rule not applied to other sectors of the economy?
Is it not a scale issue?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you look at it, what is fair is fair. So if you say that I have two diesel generators to myself, I have to pay for effluent discharge. So you who have two in your offices, for example, should also pay the same, should be charged the same. So, and also hospitals also should be charged the same. So every sector of the economy that uses the same kind of infrastructure should attract the same level of taxes and levies. It shouldn't be discriminatory on telecom services. And we are saying that because it's a service that is seen to be available, we become very attractive to public actors. And they say, no, telecom is available, the people are making money, and we become the first level of attraction to all revenue collection agents without being mindful of the impact on the public. So if she says to me that, yes, the people are demanding quality of services, yes, rightly so, but also the public actors in those states and in those local governments have a role to play in that. Because if you see a few sites in a state and 10 states are out of service and you leave the operators to go and fight and negotiate with a revenue collection agent, what do? At that time, the citizens will suffer for poor quality of services.
All right. How will you describe your relationship with the regulator in the past decade, at least? I know that part of what you have insisted on is that in the past 11 years, there hasn't been any tariff review upward. But what is the kernel of your relationship with the regulator? And if the window for this price review is denied yet again, what are your options?
Two things. First, relationship with our regulator is excellent. It's very good. Part of the success we have seen in the industry is traceable to the kind of regulator that we have. However, independence of the regulator is not negotiable. Because once you subject issues of regulation to political interference, you have a problem. And what we are seeing even in this conversation, is regulatory intervention being subjected to political intervention. Because ideally, the regulator has a mechanism for managing this issue of pricing. We can go to the operator and say, this is what we want to charge. Regulator has a mechanism for conducting independent price study. And they say, you know what, this is the cost study we have done by an independent party related to our demand. Based on that, according to the instrument of approval, they will say this is the way to go, this is not the way to go. But when you subject those decisions to political interference, they have a problem. And that's where we are. I must also recall the problems we have with the banks. This issue of USSD, which has gained public discussion at some point. It was a simple commercial agreement that became political. Because parties have agreement between themselves. I will send you traffic, you will send me traffic, I will bill you, you will pay me, I will pay you. If you default, there are mechanisms for controlling the default, for managing the default. But when it became something of political interference, we have a problem. So then the CBN and the NCC, they had a problem of where to go, what will happen if operators disconnect the USSD service, what will not happen and all of that. And that's where we are. So to answer your question, our relationship with the regulator is good and excellent. But the independence of our regulator is challenged. And that's what we must address. Because the success of the industry, I say again, is traceable in part to the independence of the regulator. Because recall that before 2001, we had GSM licenses in this country. But the regulator was subjected at that time to different kind of political interference. You could hear over a radio announcement that the license has been cancelled. But when our regulator became independent, an auction was conducted, licenses were granted, and they've managed the sector up to this point. What we are now discussing, the issue we are now dealing with, is a compromise on the independence of our regulator. Because who asked you before your the cable TV at home price went up? Who asked you before the cost of malaria medication went up? Who asked you before the cost of bag of rice went up? Nobody discussed these things. But you know, we are aware that our sector is critical, provides social service that has a significant impact on the life of the people, but the independence of our regulator is significantly important to the stability of the sector.
Okay, Mr. Adebayo.
And in the absence of an intervention on this, The risk we stand
Yes.
is that people will stop investing. And when people stop investing, you come to a point where the world is at 6G, at 7G, we're on 4G and 5G. You come to a point where services are no longer available, so you can come to a Faloma in the morning, there is a network. If you go to the other side in the evening, in the morning, there is no network. Because people cannot manage all the sites. Because once people stop investing, systems will go down, equipment will go old, people will not do new things.
Can I ask about shareholders and this investment thing? Because I believe, like, for example, MTN reported a huge loss, but it was mostly due to Forex and the Naira devaluation. Their revenues actually increased, I believe, over 20%. So it does seem that perhaps shareholder rights and shareholder profits is being put over the fact that this is, as you said, a national security good. It's a need. Your service is a need. That this, because Forex devaluation of the Naira and Forex shocks are affecting every business. But if we're thinking about the profits of shareholders and how large those profits should be, or if they are now going to be willing to reinvest in this segment, isn't that going to actually affect the lives of daily Nigerians, regular Nigerians?
To be honest, in all of this conversation, there hasn't been discussion around shareholders, investment, return on investment, or profit. We are talking about sustainability of an industry. That's the key issue. Okay, it's only when an industry is sustainable that people will invest. And you can't state, if people have said they have made a loss is a loss. You can't say it is in this quantum or it is that quantum, or it is this impact or that impact. Because if people have declared losses, then it is losses. And we cannot also take the state of health of one company in the sector to determine the health of the entire sector. It's not right. And we should not make that mistake. Telecom is a very critical sector to the economy. And all of us are stakeholders in telecom services. Because if it affects you, it affects me, it affects our e-commerce, it affects our e-government, it affects our e-health and all that. And what we are saying, the issue of tariff is not in the front burner. There are many other factors surrounding that. And we say we need to take the issues holistically. If you look at the press statement, the tariff actually came as an issue of pricing right. One is investment, second is protection of infrastructure, third is this right pricing, and fourth is independence of our regulator. And we must take all of these issues together to be able to have a sustainable sector. Because once people stop investing, we have a problem.
Anyway, speaking about the sustainability of the sector, I mean, as Nigerian telecoms industries, of course, continue to be confronted by this threat of low revenue projections in recent times, I wonder, just to deviate a bit, I mean, there is a bit of worry about the bottom line that telcos in Nigeria may soon experience due to the entry of, Starlink, which is this satellite broadband internet service provider. There's already an uneasiness among telecom operators and some industry observers who see the business model of Starlink, the satellite service, as a threat to this local internet service providers and telecom operators. I just want to know what your thoughts are when it comes to this fear that Starlink in itself is targeting major market revenue shares.
Okay. I have seen the transition of the industry. I've seen it since 2001 to today. And always at any point, and when you have a new entrant, it changes the rule of the game and it makes people to do better. We used to be in those days private telecom operators. They call us PTOs. And when the GSM operators were licensed, we felt threatened that they are coming to take a large share of the market. But by the time the players went into action, the numbers, even for the PTOs as small as we were, became better because they had more subscribers, we had fewer subscribers, so we had more people dialing into their network and more people dialing from their network into our network. So the numbers became better. Helps us to do better in terms of quality, helps us to do better in terms of coverage, and helps us to do better in terms of pricing. So I think the more the players, the better actually. And there are technology dynamics. So each one will respond in its own way technologically to mitigate against this kind of competition. So I wouldn't consider that as a factor to worry about. I think it just helps players to do better, and it gives the consumers better options. Imagine today you have alternatives to your cable TV at home. Somebody will do better, somebody will price better, somebody will deliver better quality of service, and the rest of it. You know what Netflix has come to do in this dynamics of internet television and the rest of them. So I think the more the players, the better. Yeah. But the bottom line, which is the base infrastructure, has to be sustainable. Without that, we have a problem, and that's what we're talking about.
All right, Mr. Adebayo, in the spirit of appropriate pricing, What do you say to those who say that Nigerians are being ripped off, and that if you consider the amount that Nigerians pay for services here, and the quality of service that they get compared to, say, the UK or France or Germany, that we pay much more than our peers over there, are paying. You have a contract, a contract arrangement there. You get a brand new phone every other year. With £20, I believe, you have an entire, household taken care of on a monthly basis. Here, we do not have such options. Here, you are being billed, repeatedly. Data is not steady, and yet you're asking for more. What are the issues? Why should telecoms, be cheaper to a consumer in London or in Paris or in Germany than in Lagos or Abuja?
Okay, I spoke earlier about the right prices.
Yeah.
Pricing right. And we spoke about tariff reflecting cost of providing services. In those jurisdictions that you have mentioned, the problems faced by their service providers is not what we face here. The cost borne by their service providers is not the cost that we bear here. In London, for example, you don't have the players installing private generators to run their stations. You don't have damage to their infrastructure and they have to pay. If you drive a car in England and you crash into a telecom pole, the state will prosecute you, not the operator. So if you destroyed our tower on Falomo Road, for example, in Nigeria, we have to pay. There is no recourse to anyone. That's not the reason why the price is high, but there are two different operating environments. The challenges that we face here, and what they face there, they're completely different. So when you talk about issues that constitute the consumer pricing, elements of a trading environment, operating costs, are directly proportional to the cost that consumers pay. On another note, however, I stand to disagree with you that costs are cheaper in those places. A few of us who have had the benefit of going across these jurisdictions see that when you actually look at it in terms of the details and the bottom line, in some of those places you pay a bit more than you pay in Nigeria.
Like where?
I don't want to go. No, I don't want to go into those details.
No, let's exhaust it. Like where?
If in the UK, for example, what do you pay for? How much do you pay for a gigabyte of data? In Canada, how much do you pay?
I pay about £20.
Yeah. How much does that
and it lasts.
For an income in Naira, how much does that translate to? I'm not saying an income in British pounds. An income in Naira, how much does that translate to? So you can't take £50 in UK.
Even at that is cheaper.
Just check the number. Just check the number. No, if you go to the details, statistics have shown. If you go to the details and you look at all of this, you know that all of us, we all belong to a global group. And we see all of these numbers. We see all of this. And, even if you look at the dynamics of pricing in terms of marketing and the rest of them, lessons are taken from different jurisdictions. But the bottom line to speak to this is that the cost of services and the pricing index in those jurisdictions is different from price index here because of the high cost of production in our environment. That's just the bottom line.
Are you looking at also some of these taxes that you raise, for example, environment tax and such things? Because the four major things you've spoken about is infrastructure, one, protecting infrastructure, and I would say maybe government failure when it comes to security, which a lot of Nigerians will relate to. And you've also spoken about, possible increase of tariffs because you want cost-reflective pricing. But have you also, are you guys also considering asking governments to maybe reduce some of the tax burdens that telecoms face? Is this an avenue that you've considered?
We have made cases to the federal government. This issue of taxes of over 49 paid by operators is not sustainable. We are aware that that's now being looked into by government at high levels. It's not even a conversation you can have. You can't have one sector facing so many taxes and levies. It's not sustainable in any jurisdiction. And again, if my brother here asked about cost of production of services, what you pay in UK and what you pay here, you don't have operators in those jurisdictions having to deal with so many layers of taxes and levies as the case may be, so to say. So all of these play a part in our operating environment. But I think more than that is that government has to look at this issue. Government has to look at the issue of protection of our infrastructure, and there has to be recourse for operators. When there are issues of damage to telecom infrastructure, there should be recourse for the operators. And that's why we are saying that government should classify our infrastructure as critical security and economic infrastructure and accommodate this level of protection that you will give to any security infrastructure in any part of the country. And I think that will help in a number of ways. And also, when there are issues of damage that are established to be willful damage, there should be sanctions. Where there are no sanctions, you will have construction companies destroying fiber cable. There's no recourse for the operator. You'll have individuals going to lock up sites because they want to increase the rent on which they are for which they are charging. You have state government going to lock up sites because they want IGR. If we are classified as security and critical national infrastructure, we'll be insulated from all of this, and then we can have a better playing environment. Yeah.
So how are you pushing the other three points that you raised in your press statement outside of the price review? How are you pushing it? Is it to the regulator or is it to the federal government directly, even though the regulator is also part of the federal government? Is it directly to the federal government? And if that is so, wouldn't that require some form of lobbying and some form of political connection to get, all those things sorted?
Again, the kind of service we provide, we believe is critical enough to attract the attention of government when we mention these issues. And so what we have done is we have written to our minister, and we know he's looking at it. He's doing a good job in what he's doing there. We've written to our regulator. We believe they are looking at it. And what we are only saying is that it's a call for action. If something is not done now, we are sitting on a time bomb.
All right, Mr. Gbenga, Adebayo, we want to thank you for joining us on the morning show today. I mean, very brilliant analysis of what is happening.
Thank you.
But of course, people still have the right to say the pocket is not smiling. All right, thank you so very much.